was probably the worst though, because one of the most popular girls in the entire boarding school had gone missing. The last person to see the missing student was her best friend, Dee Dee. And I think that it's safe to say that Dee Dee has not been the same since the day that her best friend Gao vanished. Neither of them actually dormed at the boarding school because they both lived 10 minutes away from campus, so it just didn't make sense to pay the boarding fees, and their parents wanted them to stay home. So that night of January 9th, it's a Sunday night, Dee Dee sleeps over at Gao's house. This is their first ever sleepover, and I guess both of them are busy staying up late, enjoying each other's company. Neither of them woke up to their alarm the next morning. So Monday morning, alarm goes off, they gotta make it to school, and they're sleeping in.
Is this a middle school, high school?
High school, they're both 16. So instead, Gao's dad is shaking them awake like, get up, you're late, come on, start getting ready. They check the time on the clock. It is 6 a.m. in the morning. They need to get to school by 6:15. They're throwing on their uniforms as fast as they can. They're grabbing their textbooks, shoving it into their backpacks. They skip breakfast. They run out the door without even properly saying goodbye to Gao's parents. They have exactly 15 minutes to get to school and get in line for the morning assembly. Side note about the morning assembly in China, it is a very serious thing. Every single morning, students have to stand in line next to their classmates on the campus field. Usually, the line order is even determined, so it's not like you can just sneak in and stand at the end of the line. It's by height. The class president of each class is usually standing at the front regardless of their height. You stand there at attention while the national anthem plays and the flag is being raised, and then every single student runs a few laps around the campus. Okay, this jogging experience isn't really that fun. I mean, it's more enjoyable than taking an exam, for example. But this is the last thing that kids want to do at 6:15 in the morning, especially in the frigid, cold winter of northeastern China. It's like 10 degrees outside. They don't want to do this. Almost all the schools in China do these sort of laps around the campus. The Chinese government makes some form of light exercise mandatory in all public schools. The jogs typically range from a quarter mile to 3/4 of a mile, so it's not a marathon by any means. But missing this assembly without a teacher-approved reason is like the equivalent of skipping class. Gao and Dee Dee decide to both just hop onto Dee Dee's bike to save time. They didn't even talk all the way to school. It's like they blacked out, just focused on getting to campus. They end up reaching the edge of campus at exactly 6:13 a.m. And they know this because there's always a warning bell of sorts that rings 2 minutes before the assembly actually starts. It's like a nice little hint. Get your ass to the assembly now. But bikes are not allowed on the actual school campus. So they have to get off of Dee Dee's bike and walk the bike to the designated bike location on campus, then run to the field. It's like a whole thing. They gotta do this in 2 minutes. They're rushing. When they finally make it after sprinting to the designated bike parking spot, Dee Dee's sweating. Her best friend Gao is grabbing her purse and textbooks from the bike basket, and she tells Dee Dee she's gonna head up to class. Her homeroom teacher gave her a pass to skip this morning's assembly because she's been sick for the past few days, and it's outside in winter. Dee Dee's half listening. She's chaining up her bike, and then she's thinking, wait, I'm going to the assembly. My best friend Gao's not going, so she can just take my stuff up to the classroom so that I don't have to carry all of this to the assembly because I'm already late, right? This whole thought process is happening within 3 seconds. Dee Dee turns around and she's like, wait, Gao. She's gone. They were standing in a pretty open area. She just walked off 2 seconds ago. She isn't even walking off in the distance. Dee Dee literally can't see her anywhere. She's gone. Just vanished into the morning fog. It was weird. But Dee Dee's like, okay, maybe she's sprinting. That's odd. Dee Dee rushes to get the rest of her stuff and she makes it to the assembly. Dee Dee would not see Gao the rest of the day, which is normal since they don't have any classes together. And they normally don't even cross paths with each other during meal breaks, so nothing is out of the ordinary. At least not until class is over. So the boarding school kids that dormed on the campus, they go wash up. They go to their dorms. They've got strict rules that everybody has to be in bed at a certain time, be knocked out by 10 p.m. Meanwhile, the non-boarding students, they find their own rides home. And Dee Dee's out there waiting for Gao because she's thinking, I'm the one that brought her to school, so I should be the one to drop her off at school. I can't just leave her hanging. So she's waiting. She sees all the non-boarding kids walk out and Gao's not there. And Dee Dee's kind of poking her head around to see, is she in the crowd? And then a girl passes by. This is a girl from Gao's homeroom class. And she's like, what are you doing, Dee Dee? Oh, I'm trying to wait and see if Gao needs a ride home. What? She wasn't at school today. Didi was so confused. I literally just saw her. I was the one that dropped her off at school. That's so strange. So coupled with Gao's random vanishing act this morning, Didi felt like she's losing her mind. She almost started second guessing herself. Did I even come to school with Gao this morning? Like maybe I was so sleep deprived that I hallucinated all of that. Wait, but that doesn't even make sense. Gao would never come back to school. She was officially missing. Some of the students at the boarding school thought Gao ran off with some new boy from a different school. Others thought that she ran away to scare her parents into, I don't know, caring more about her, giving her more allowance. They all had their own little theories. But I don't think that anyone was expecting that 33 days later, Gao's body would be found in the restricted area of the boarding school. She would be found half naked, brutally assaulted, tortured, murdered, and even after she passed, there was evidence that the killer or the killers continued to essay her corpse. The boarding school was not only dealing with a killer now, but a necrophiliac. She was found 30 feet away from the dorms in the main building. And everyone in that school, staff, teachers, students, her boyfriend, her best friend, the class presidents, they would all become suspects. We would like to thank today's sponsors who have made it possible for Rotten Mango to support the Innocence Project, the leading nonprofit in criminal justice reform. They've been working for over 3 decades to free the innocent, prevent wrongful convictions, and create fair, compassionate, and equitable systems of justice for everyone. This episode's partnerships have also made it possible to support Rotten Mango's growing team of dedicated researchers, translators, while they focus on shedding light on stories from all over the world. We'd also like to thank you guys for your continued support as we work on our mission to be worthy advocates of these causes. And as always, show notes are available at rottenmangopodcast.com. Today's case happened in China. We had our Mandarin-speaking researchers and translator help with gathering of the data on this one. But if there is anything that's lost in translation, miscommunicated, or if you have any additional information, please let us know in the comments. Now, just one quick disclaimer before we get started. Almost everyone involved in this case was given an alias, so we don't actually know any of the witnesses' real names, and a lot of the aliases' surnames were really similar, or if not the same, so just to avoid any confusion, we will be giving them aliases of our own. So with that being said, let's get into it. The man was sitting down watching TV. This is like the only time during the day that he can truly escape and just forget about everything that's going on in his life. If he had a choice, he probably would not be watching this particular channel. He was not really a true crime fan, but there were a ton of other people in the room with him, and so it's not really up to him. So he sits there watching this true crime documentary. The focus was on a high school boarding student who went missing years ago. There were so many twists and turns in her case, it made for a good documentary, until they finally caught the killer. He was a man who read a horror story and got so inspired by this fictional, creepy story about murder, death, and lust that he wanted to recreate the same exact scene with a real life person. He wanted to participate in essay torture and necrophilia. And the man watching the TV, he was the man that they were talking about. He was watching from prison. Just 5 years ago, the Lin Shu boarding school was in full chaos. I mean, concerned parents are calling the school. Some students are transferring to new, safer schools. Classes are being interrupted as police officers are rushing through the main building, going room by room, dorm by dorm, searching for 16-year-old missing Gao. They're checking the closets. They're checking under the beds. They even searched the teachers' dorm rooms. But something about the search, it felt like the police were looking for a body. And for whatever reason, they believe that Gao, the missing student, was still on campus. Now, Gao's parents, they're very wealthy, so the police are going to leave no stone unturned. So Gao's dad, he's a prominent business owner who owned this mechanical company, but he also has a strong political influence. He served as a representative of the People's Congress in Linyi. So the fact that his daughter is missing, like, this is a big deal. And Gao, she was the flower girl in her class. Out of all the girls in school, a lot of the students said she was top 3 in terms of how pretty she was. So like the flower girl in Chinese schools refers to a girl that is not only the prettiest in class, but she's usually very smart, usually comes from a good family, and she has no idea that she's the flower girl most of the time. Or maybe she
Yeah.
just doesn't
Or we
have.
call it class flower
Yeah,
or school
the
flower.
school flower, yeah.
Yeah.
She was the school flower. She was smart, which is important. Her parents were wealthy and prominent. She just had everything. And side note, she's not spoiled or rebellious by any means. Like, so don't think like a Nepo baby. Her family actually had a chauffeur, full-time chauffeur.
Wow.
Gao never got chauffeured to school. She's like, that's kind of dumb because then I would have to sit in traffic for 15, 20 minutes. But if I just rode my bike, I'd be at campus in like 10 minutes. So no, I don't need to sit in this fancy car, Dad. And that's just who Gao was. And she was very likable and very, very responsible of a person. And her parents were very present in her life. So they're not just like these wealthy business owners that have no idea what's going on in Gao's life. On January 10th, the day that Gao vanished, Gao's parents were very quick to notice that things were weird. This is the day of. So every single day, without fail, Gao would come home for their lunch break at 12:20 p.m. That day, she didn't come home. She didn't even call to tell her parents that she was going to stay behind and study or anything. This is very unlike her. Gao's house staff, they noticed that her food was getting cold, so they called Gao's dad, who's at work, and they're like, hey, we don't know what to do. She's not here. Is it because she didn't bring her bike to school? So maybe she can't come home for lunch because no one can give her a ride. So in that case, should we send the driver to go pick her up? And the dad's like, it's a little weird, but she's a 16-year-old, and she's at school. Maybe she's having lunch with someone at school. It's no big deal. You know what? Forget about it. We'll talk about it over dinner. They hang up. Now, this part was shocking, but the boarding school ends class actually at around 9:20 p.m. So they get a really long lunch, and that's why Gao goes home for lunch. But they've got these nighttime classes, study sessions where you can get homework done, and it officially ends at 9:20 p.m. Gao was always home at 9:30 p.m. on the dot every single night. Like, she is a creature of habit. She's got a routine that she sticks to. 9:30 p.m. on the dot, she would walk in. The staff or her parents would have a glass of warm milk on the table for her. She would grab it, walk into her room, exhausted, and start changing. At 9:40 p.m., 10 minutes after she's supposed to be home, Gao's dad makes it out to the kitchen area, and he stops dead in his tracks when he sees on the table is the glass of milk. Maybe it's father's intuition, we don't know, but he felt that something was very, very, very wrong. He went out looking for his missing daughter. And then the next day, something really odd happened. So Gao's still not home. Nobody's seen her in school. He has no answers. He starts searching Gao's room, looking for anything, any sort of clue, right? Or something that could point him in the right direction of where his daughter could be, because nobody's helping. Everyone's like, I don't know, I didn't see her. Didi's like, I dropped her off and then I was running to the assembly and she vanished. He's scavenging through her room and he finds a folded up piece of paper. It's got a phone number and an address on there. He does not recognize this address, but it's in Shibo County, which is about 200 miles away. To get there, that's like a 3.5-hour drive. Gao's dad gets in the car and he starts driving. For 3.5 hours, he keeps wondering to himself, what is my daughter doing with this kind of address? Like, this is not you're 16. You don't just drive 3.5 hours. You don't just take public transportation and get somewhere 200 miles away. When he pulls up to the address, he parks the car, looks out the window, and he's like, is this the right place? It's a barbecue restaurant. Not even a famous one. It's just like a random hole-in-the-wall barbecue restaurant. Gao's dad goes inside and talks to the owners. The owner's daughter actually knew Gao and said, Gao was actually talking to one of my guy friends at my school. They had met online and that's how I know Gao, but they've never actually met in person, and I don't think they've even spoken on the phone in the past few months. That's all the information he got.
Yeah, but why would she have the address on the paper?
Exactly. So it's the question of, did she not throw away the restaurant address? Why did she have it in the first place? Did she plan on going to meet him? Or was there something going on with this boy? Like, what's going on? Is this where she came the day that she went missing? Gao's dad didn't really know what to make of this, but he knew that he needed to find his daughter, right? So he posted a $42,000 reward for anyone who could help locate his daughter. This is a crazy amount of money in this local town. I mean, it's a crazy amount of money anywhere, but the average monthly salary in this town was around 116 US dollars. The reward is 42,000 US dollars. A bowl of noodles only costs about 70 cents. For this town, $42,000 is life-changing money. It's not even retirement money. It's like generational wealth money. Side note, it's actually so much money that there was a heated discussion in the community about the wealth gap.
Because of how much money. Wow.
the reward was, yeah. I'm sure it's even more now if you factor in inflation because this took place in 2005. So with that amount of money on the line, I mean, a lot of tips are coming in. All sorts of crazy plots, conspiracies, shadowy figures, organizations, lots of people throwing random ideas out there. But for some reason, Gao's parents, they feel like someone in that school knows what happened to their daughter. It's not going to be some random person in the community. It's going to be someone in that school. February 11th, 2005, Janitor Lam was walking down the empty halls of this boarding school. The dorms, the classrooms, the hallways, they're all empty, which, I don't know, maybe it's more peaceful, maybe it's more eerie, I'm not sure. The students had all gone home for Lunar New Year break. They're all due to come back in just 4 days. So it's Janitor Lam's job to get the entire school cleaned up before school is back in session. So that's why he's in school on the 3rd day of Lunar New Year that year. Typically, this is a big celebratory day that he's supposed to spend with family, but instead, he's walking through the hallways trying to figure out what needs to be cleaned. There typically isn't too much to clean in the boarding school. The students in China are mostly in charge of maintaining their own classrooms and their own dorms. But the shared spaces, so the hallways, the restrooms, that's where Janitor Lam is going to focus on today. And he just had this sneaking suspicion that the old restrooms, the out-of-service restrooms, are going to be the hardest part to clean. Now, I'm going to quickly give you the lay of the land. The main building is the academic building, as they call it. It's 5 stories high, and it consists of all the classrooms, teachers' offices, and about half of the dorms. So it's a mixed-use building. Then on campus, you have another building that's got a few other offices and rooms, but it mainly serves as a primary dorm building. And I believe that's where all the girls are. And of course, you've got the basketball court, the field, the parking lots, all of that. But the academic main building is the one that we're going to focus on today. So each floor of that building has old and new restrooms. Most of the old bathrooms in the building are considered restricted, and students are not allowed to use them anymore. But you are allowed to go in and use the sink, which makes it sound like it's not that restricted, right? But let me give you some context. So the bathroom layout is a bit different from what we're used to. You know how in most public restrooms, you walk in and there are a few sinks out in the open. Then you have almost this hallway of toilet stalls that are lined up next to each other on either side. And then you have to walk out of that little hallway, out of the stall, to wash your hands. Well, at this school, the old restrooms had that, but they also had a door blocking the actual restroom stalls from the sinks.
Okay. So separate the hand washing and the actual toilet.
Yeah, and it's like a full-size door, so it's not going to have the giant gap at the bottom or the top. Like it's like a full frame door where every part is covered. So if you want to use the restroom, you would have to open that door and then you would be facing all of the toilet stalls. And because that door is there and all the toilets are out of order due to water pressure issues, the janitors, they went through and they padlocked all of the doors that lead into the toilet stalls. So truly, you can only go in and use the sinks. You can't even go hang out in the toilet stalls. It's padlocked. Well, before the break, the students considered the sink area of the old bathrooms their personal closet, their personal trash can. So before break, everyone's like, go clean your dorms. And the kids are like, you know what? I'm going to go just dump all of my trash in the sink area of the bathrooms. That's what they were doing. So, I mean, I guess you could argue that they thought it was okay. Yeah. So most of the trash were, do you know what wheat husk is? In Korea, we have these pillows as well, where they're like almost grain pillows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like dry wheat type of pillow, yeah.
Yes. So they would have all of that stuffed in their pillow, and I guess they're trying to get rid of it before the break is over because the teachers are like, get rid of your pillow stuffing. So they threw a bunch of the pillow stuffing down the sink because they're like, oh, this is organic matter. It should be okay. It was a little odd. So Janitor Lam starts cleaning, and his coworker, Janitor Huang, so these are the 2 janitors that manage the entire campus, right? Janitor Huang told him, hey, if it's messy in the old bathrooms again, like it is every time before break, just throw everything out the window.
What?
It's a little odd, but bear with him. Janitor Huang is saying most of the time they're throwing away like the wheat straws, the wheat husks, right? It's organic matter. So just sweep it all up into a broom and then throw it out the bathroom window since it's a little odd. Since all of the bathrooms are on the same spot on each floor plan of every single floor, there's no other windows beneath the old bathrooms. So instead of like lugging around a giant trash bag and then like putting in the weed husk, just throw it out the window. We can have a pile at the bottom of the window on the ground floor outside. I will funnel it into these trash bags and then go take it to the dump site.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. So Janitor Huang is like, hey, whenever you get a chance during break, go in and do that. And then before school starts, I'll come in and clear up all the debris. Janitor Lam goes in alone and he starts, it's an efficient idea. He thinks, okay, this is smart. So he starts going from bathroom to bathroom. Now, here's the thing. The window is at the opposite restricted area. So you know how that door leads to the toilet stalls? And then at the very end is the window. There's no other window. So he has to unlock every single padlock and then drag it through the toilet stalls and then out the window. Janitor Lam gets to work on the old bathroom on the first floor. It was messy, just like they suspected. And once he was done, he made his way up to the old restroom on the second floor. And then the third. He gathered up all the trash around the sink area on the third floor old restroom, but when he went to go unlock the padlock to get to the window, it's not opening. And he's like, oh my gosh, is this the wrong key? He tries another key and then another key because he has one of those like stereotypical janitor keys where it's just like 50 million keys, and he tries every single one of his keys and none of them are working. And none of this is making sense. Janitor Lam had been the one to install all of these metal padlocks in the restrooms, and he distinctly remembered adding a key onto this keychain. This is the only keychain he has. And he's standing there for a brief moment, hands on his hips, confused. Like, is there some sort of glitch in the universe? This is so odd. But then he notices, wait, that's not the padlock that I left. It's a different padlock. Maybe it's a different brand. Maybe it looks different. He's like, I just know that's not the one that I had. So who would do that? Why would they take away my padlock? How would they even get my padlock open and then replace it with their own padlock?
Yeah, they have to remove it first.
Yeah, and he's like, okay, weird, but maybe Janitor Huang replaced it because it broke or something and he just forgot to tell me? Who knows? Janitor Lam went to the storage room and found a pair of pliers. He runs back to the old restroom on the third floor and starts working to break off the metal lock. He gets it open in maybe like 3-4 minutes. The door slowly creaks open and the toilet area somehow has been completely trashed. This restricted area that nobody's allowed in is trashed. The area is filled with random junk, pieces of wood, clothing, fabric, glass, unwanted papers, empty water bottle lids, plastic bags, random empty tubes of toothpaste. But even through all this trash, Janitor Lam could see at the very last stall, near the end, sticking out from the stall was just a pair of white pale legs on the ground. And they were not moving. Once he processes that information, he U-turns it out of there and starts running down the hallway. The school is so empty. He keeps running all the way to the teachers' offices just in hopes that some of the teachers had come into work to prepare for the kids coming back soon after break. He runs to the other side of the building, swings open the teacher's office door, and they're like, what is going on? There's like one teacher in there. You look like you've seen a ghost. He gets 2 teachers. He's like, we need to find everybody else. He gets 2 teachers to come back to the third floor restricted restroom with him. And he's like, okay, maybe the pair of legs are gone now, right? That would be the best case scenario. Maybe I thought someone is dead, but it's just all a harmless prank. Or maybe it's like a drunk student that somehow got into the restricted area, passed out, I opened the door, and then they got up and walked off, right? The legs were still there. An emergency call was placed at 2:04 p.m. from the boarding school. Because it was Lunar New Year, only one police officer was able to make it out to the school. The school faculty rushed him into the restroom, and on the third stall on the left, there was a dead body. The body belonged to Gao Ting, the 16-year-old student who was missing since January 10th. For over a month, students at Linshu Second High School were studying and living amongst a dead body. For 33 days, she had been in the restricted restroom on the third floor, just 30 feet away from the dorm rooms. She was found in the bathroom stall, face down, naked from the waist down. Above her waist, she was wearing a 2-layer thermal bra. The rest of her clothing was off, but someone had wrapped her torso in like a white plastic bag, and around her neck was her scarf. The scarf was still tied very tightly around her, and it looked like someone did or tried to strangle her with her own scarf. The bottom half of Gao was covered in dirt. Underneath Gao's body was a red puffer jacket, her blue cashmere sweater, and a red pole. It looked like a mop handle without the mop head, so like think of like a broomstick. And all over the bathroom stall, there was just a ton of blood. There was blood on the clothes, on the walls, on the floor. Some of the dried blood stains had hair, clumps of hair just dried up in it. Just going off forensics and the damage done to Gao's body, a really just strange, dark picture starts to emerge. So Gao is found naked from the waist down. Someone strangled her with her own scarf. Gao's left cheek had 4 visible finger indentations on them. So it looked like someone had either slapped Gao with so much force that it left an imprint on the side of her face, or it looked like someone was grabbing her face, like gripping her face. Her skin had abrasions and bruising all over her face, and in the center of her forehead, she had a wound that contained tiny glass fragments inside. Most of the injuries were on her forehead and on the right side of her face near her temples. It was clear that she put up a fight. When forensics later unwrapped her from the white plastic bags, she had these neat, meticulous cuts on her torso. There was a vertical incision on her stomach in between her breasts. So it started up in between her breasts, like literally in the center of her torso, and then it went all the way down to the top of her belly button. It was about 7 inches in length. It's like they wanted it to be very, very, very straight. There was another much shorter vertical cut right next to the main one. And on Gao's lower abdomen, there was a fully open wound that went from underneath her belly button diagonally towards the right side of her groin. It was deep. You could basically see her internal organs from how deep it was. And all over her thighs, she had these smaller vertical and horizontal cuts. They were not as deep as the one on her abdomen, but they were just like crisscrossing each other. It is clear that whoever did this is very sadistic. But it gets a bit stranger. So initially, authorities assumed that the essay was going to focus on a very specific region in her body, like the one that you would immediately think of. And they did find evidence of assault, but they stated that her hymen was still intact, and they believed that there was no full penetration prior to death. Some
Okay.
experts stated that perhaps whoever did this had plans to assault her, but then realized that he wasn't able to sustain the correct amount of blood flow down there. And they theorized that someone wanted to assault her, could not maintain the correct amount of blood flow, got very angry, and started punishing Gao for his own incapabilities by slicing up her body and ultimately strangling her with her own scarf. Another forensic detail that could maybe be used to bolster this theory is translated reports state that her private back region was in a quote open state and that the muscles around her region were quote loose. This indicates that after her death, Gao had been essayed back there by foreign objects. The reason
Wow.
being that if it happened before her death, more likely than not, her muscles would have contracted back to her normal resting state, but they didn't because she's not alive.
Wow.
Authorities are pretty certain that the red broom handle that was found underneath her body was used. So you're talking full-on necrophilia. Lastly, there were large red patches covering her waist, thighs, and butt everywhere. And Gao's belongings were also found in the restrooms. Her English textbooks were neatly placed on the left side of the toilet, like stacked on top of each other. And she had 2 textbooks. So the bigger textbook was under.